I made a formula book, something which is advised by everyone to make a formula book. However, what I did was I also, after writing formulas for every chapter, I left 3-4 pages blank and then began the next chapter. So every time I encountered a new type of problem or a new approach or a tricky question from that particular topic, I would go back and write that concept down. As the timer hit 38 minutes done, I just left the mouse. I took a step back and I just closed my eyes and just calmed down. I'm like, okay, whatever is done is done. Now you cannot panic in the next section. You have to be calm. You have to approach it in the right way, and you have to score whatever you can in the next two sections. My name is Parshva Dugad. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I've also cleared the level 2 of the CFA program. Currently, I'm pursuing my MBA at IIM Indore. So I started with completing CA, then I also cleared CFA. And now I think to get into investment banking, MBA is the best springboard for you to get there. That is why I think I chose to pursue MBA. This attempt was my first attempt at CAT. However, I had planned to give CAT in life since MBA was always a career plan for me. The why I decided to give CAT this year has a very different story. So I cleared my CA final in July 2022. And after that, there was this FIDE Chess Olympiad that happened in Chennai. I went there as a team leader of volunteers, and for a month I was there. So when I came back from the Olympiad, I thought, okay, now there are only 3.5 months left, so should I even give this CAT? And the placement season was going on in ICA as well. So I decided, you know what, I'll first give CAT and then worry about the placements. I'll give my full focus to this. If this doesn't work out, maybe I'll give it next year, but this time I want to give some effort to it. It was around mid-August that I decided, okay, I'll take up CAT. I had some resources which I had studied about before. What do I want to approach? How do I want to approach it? So I researched on that, what should be my plan of action. I took 10 days to first chart a plan as to how I should go about it. And around the first week of September is when I actually started preparing for CAT per se. So I had around 3 months left for CAT. So how I divided it into was QA, LRDI and VARC. So giving JEE, having a background in quants, I was a little more comfortable with quants as such. So I did not really have to put in as much efforts as I did for LRDI and VARC. However, there were some important aspects I would like to highlight about my journey with QA. So the most important thing of that is I made a formula book, which is said that, something which is advised by everyone to make a formula book. However, what I did was I also, after writing formulas for every chapter, I left 3-4 pages blank and then began the next chapter. So every time I encountered a new type of problem or a new approach or a tricky question from that particular topic, I would go back and write that concept down. Talking about LRDI, I realized that LRDI is more about how do you see the data and decide how to approach it. And when you say approach, it means how do you represent the data. So what I used to do was I used to first solve the set with a pencil. Then after finishing or not able to finish, I would go back to see the solution. Then I would see what mistakes I've made, and if I've made any mistake, I would circle that in blue. So that is what I would know next time that I made a mistake. Or if I was not able to solve, I would write it separately in blue pen so that there's difference between the pencil and the blue pen. And even in that, when I'm revising it for the second time, whatever I feel is important, I would highlight it with a black pen. So by the time I'm revising it for the third time, I'm very clear that what are the mistakes I'm making, what are the mistakes I have to avoid. And that really helped me even in mocks and in the D-Day as well. Talking about VARC, since I had only 3 months of time, I did not follow the traditional approach of reading magazines, articles, novels. So I directly jumped into solving questions. I followed a more exam-oriented approach of approaching RCs. So I would solve RCs, then whatever mistakes I'm making, again I made a mistakes book of VARC as well, and I would note down the mistakes. So let's say I chose this option because it was too extreme or it was a hasty generalization. So these kind of things I would note it down so that the next time I don't repeat those mistakes. One important strategy that helped me in VARC was how I approached the vocabulary part of it. So I realized in the beginning that there were a lot of words I was not able to comprehend during the exam. So how do I approach it? So what I did was I made a list of words that I wanted to remember in the future. I would note them down on a post-it, and that post-it I would post it on a chartboard in my room. Like that, there were like thousands of words by the end of 3 months that I would have in front of me. So every day after I wake up, I would glance through them, and in that way, those words got ingrained in my brain. Especially I highlighted some words with a highlighter, which were the tones. These tones I was having a little struggling. I was struggling with a bit, and that's why I chose to highlight it separately, so that when I focus on that, I'm able to recollect that during the exam. So that was briefly my strategy for CAT. So I would first go with what my strategy was for approaching each section. Then I would also like to talk about what happened on the D-Day and a very interesting thing that helped me score this percentile. Firstly, for VARC, what I would do is I would first scan through the RCs, see my familiarity with the topic, what I perceive to be easy and approachable. So I would try to complete 2 RCs initially in around 15 minutes. That would be my approach. Then I would go on to VA, do that for around 15 minutes. And then if I have time left, then I would go on to the third RC, which I felt was the easier among the two. Most of the times, this used to work for me in mocks. So that is what the strategy I had adopted. For LRDI, it was very simple. In the first 2 minutes, again, you have to glance through all the 4 sets. What is your familiarity? What is your perceived ease of solving? You have to see that, then decide the order in which you want to attempt the questions. That worked out for me in mocks as well, and even on D-Day. And thirdly, if this doesn't work out, if you start a question and it doesn't work out for 8 or 10 minutes, then you leave the question. You have to let go of that attitude that no, I will get to the end of it. It had happened to me in one of the mocks where I could attempt only one set throughout the entire 40 minutes, and that way I scored 2 questions wrong. So that one mistake that I made kind of made me realize that I can't repeat that mistake again. For QA, I followed a 3-round approach. In the first round, I would go from the first question to the last question and see what all questions I can attempt in a minute, which are like the questions which were a cakewalk. So I would do that first. Then I would go back from the last question to the first question and attempt whichever questions I felt were doable. And then which were not attempted by me at all, I would go and see if time permits, I would go and see those in which I could attempt. So like that, I could at least see all the questions. And if there were easy questions at the end, I was able to tackle them earlier, rather than if I followed a sequential approach, I might have missed out on that. So that was my strategy which I used for attempting the paper. Talking about the D-Day, first thing that I ensured was I have a calm mind. So before leaving for the exam center, I meditated for around 10 minutes at home. I made sure that I go in with a calm, composed mind, and I don't really panic when I see the paper in front of me. When the first section came in front of me, I was really surprised by the level of difficulty that the passages had. I glanced through the paper and I realized that this is not really going to be a easy section. So I did what I could, but by the end of 30 minutes, I realized that no, I'm not really scoring well in this. So what I did was I tried to maximize what I could in the next 8 minutes. And as the timer hit 38 minutes done, I just left the mouse. I took a step back and I just closed my eyes and just calmed down. I'm like, okay, whatever is done is done. Now you cannot panic in the next section. You have to be calm. You have to approach it in the right way, and you have to score whatever you can in the next 2 sections. And those 2 minutes were so helpful, because what happened was I had slot 1 in CAT 2022. So LRDI, there was a change in pattern. Earlier there used to be 4 and 6 question sets, but this time there were 4 5 question sets. So you can't really predict if the 4 sections, like earlier you could predict that the 4 question set were easier or the 6 question set were a little bit difficult. If all the sets have 5 questions each, you cannot really judge just based on the number of questions. However, when I saw the LRDI paper, there were 5 question sets. How do I predict which is easier to solve? And that was a bouncer for a lot of my friends who did not understand how to approach it. But I was calm. I was like, what is the difference? It's just 5 questions. I don't know which is easier, which is difficult. Let me figure out it on my own. And then I glanced through all the 4 sets. I picked up, okay, these are the 2 sets which seem doable. I'll only do these 2 sets. I'm not going to go for more. And luckily, in the 40 minutes, I was able to solve all 10 questions of both the sets, and I was able to score very well in LRDI. Same happened in quants. I was calm. I was like, okay, whatever has happened in BA, you're not letting it affect quants. I did my 3-round strategy. I went from first to last, last to first, and then again from first to last, and I could attempt 18 questions, which was much more than any mock that I've ever attempted. So I think that calmness of 2 minutes, which I took a break, I detached myself from the CAT paper and I just, sat down and just closed my eyes. That really helped set the tone for the next 2 sections. So because of this, I was not only able to clear the sectional cutoff for VARC, I was also able to score more than 99 percentile in both the other section and cross the holy 99 percentile mark in CAT as well. I scored 99.13. So I had 3 interview calls. One was from IIM Ahmedabad, one was from IIM Kozhikode, and the third one was from IIM Indore. So my favorite interview was basically IIM Indore's interview. They when I told my introduction, they asked me a lot of questions on my hobbies, which is something I'm very passionate about. So they asked me about chess, who are the Padma Vibhushan awardees, what's your opinion on the young chess boom that's happening in India. That was really something which was interesting to talk about. Then, since I also mentioned football, they asked me about to guesstimate the number of football fans in the world, which was again a very interesting experience for me. And I also spoke about geography. So they asked me about UN, the number of countries in the world, what makes a country not a territory. So those kind of questions was something which I really liked answering. And the other technical aspect of it was based on accounting, which I was able to handle pretty well again. So if you're a CAT aspirant seeing this video right now, I would just say consistency is the key. If you now start putting efforts consistently, it will give you fruits. Sometimes there'll be highs, sometimes there'll be lows. Don't get too much affected by that. You might score very high in the mocks and you might feel very overconfident and give up on studying for some time. Don't do that mistake. Also, there might be times where you score a little lower in mocks and you might feel like giving up. You might need motivation. Trust me, everyone goes through that phase. So I would just say keep on putting the efforts that you've been putting in, and if you do it consistently, you will get the fruits from them.